let's go Defensive Player of the Year. An award that was dominated by Brook Lopez early in the year and has been nominated by Jaren Jackson Jr. in a lot of people's minds since then, but could still be up to contention. We'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. Who is your Defensive Player of the Year this season?
I feel like we've had this conversation so many times on this podcast, but I don't know if any of those have made it into our clipped videos. So maybe this is the first time a viewer will see this take. But I'm a Jaren guy. I've been a Jaren guy pretty much the entire way through. And my case has always been quite simple. I think while Brook Lopez is a phenomenal defender and is having a career best year, has really turned his career around from the type of player he was, you look at that defense and it's like, yeah, he's great. He also has Giannis next to him. He also has Drew next to him. That team's defense, I don't think it hinges solely on him, even if he is a great piece. Kind of similar to the Celtics last year. And while one of them still ended up getting the award, I do think they kind of relied on each other a bit to be a great team defense, but that defense was just so much better than everyone else that, of course, it had to go to one of them. This year, I don't think the Bucks defense is absurdly better than the Grizzlies, but the Grizzlies defense hinges so much more on Jaren Jackson. That defense was pretty before he came back, way sooner than expected, by the way, and went from whatever to literally like a top 3 defense. He flipped their season entirely around and might be the most important player on that team. Not to say he's the best player on the team, but he could easily have the most impact on whether they're going to go out there and win games or not. And so just for how much he matters to what that team does and how much success he's allowed them to have, a season with a lot of controversy, a lot of weird things happening, not the most smooth time. He's been their consistent rock, and he's allowed them to get to the point where there's still a 2 seed in this stacked conference.
Yeah, I mean, one more needs to be said, man. I mean, even if you just look at the raw block numbers, I mean, he's averaging over 3 a game. And even though sometimes that can be misleading, if you watch Jaren Jackson play, he patrols the paint like no other. It's not no empty stats. There's no stat padding. This man controls the paint like no other. And he's really elevated his game. And I think what's even so more impressive is, like, I know it's a defensive award, but he still has a big role offensively too, and he's still able to have this type of production on that side of the floor, having his best year defensively. And like Gabe said, I mean, they went from a very mid defense to being one of the best in the league, even through all the John Morant stuff, injuries, Steven Adams going down. You know, he still hasn't been healthy. They have still been able to be near the top of the conference, be one of the best defensive teams in the league, and giving themselves a real chance to make a run in the postseason. Man, Jaren Jackson, he's my award winner. Brook Lopez has had a very, very phenomenal season, and he definitely deserves some consideration. He deserves some love. But I think Jaren, you know, I would definitely give him the slight edge over Brook Lopez.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. Jaren is just so impactful. He, as you guys mentioned, he just completely changes how productive this Grizzlies defense is. And honestly, you guys were being really generous to how this Grizzlies defense was to start the year before he was back. They were bottom 5 in the league. They were a bad defense. And now they're a very good defense. And obviously that's not completely Jaren because guys have been in and out of the lineup all year. Of course, Brandon Clark's out now. Baines missed time. Jaws missed time. Steven Adams has missed time. Everyone has missed time for this team. But the most impactful part of their defense, and since the start of the year, their most available and consistent part of their defense is Jaren, which is not something we're used to saying with Jaren for someone who struggled with injuries. But since he's been back, he's been very available and has been very productive. So he's definitely my award winner here, even though I've been pushing Brook Lopez for a lot of this season. I was pushing to hopefully get him into the All-Star game, but that didn't quite happen. But even still, I don't even quite think I have Brook Lopez as my runner-up here. I'd probably give Bam a bit more love in that consideration, but Lopez is right in there as well. And Claxton probably deserves a little bit of love as well. But Jaren's definitely my pick, but there's definitely a few guys that you can make an argument for this year. But honestly, if Jaren didn't miss a few weeks to start the year, there's probably even less of a conversation.
I had Claxton as my third guy. You know, his jump this season, like, I like how you had him as, you know, a most improved candidate. I mean, just he went from, like, last season, they were kind of talking like, you know, there's games where he can't even really be on the floor because, you know, his free throw shooting wasn't great and he wasn't protecting the rim as well. this season, he's really like changed that entire narrative about it, and he's been one of the best defensive bigs in the league. So, got to show some love to Nick Claxton.
There's nothing we love here more in the podcast than a good defensive center.